chicken tenders, eating the musculatory system of a chicken. Have you ever had the burning desire to know more about the musculatory system of a chicken? What about the digestive system? How does the circulatory system work? Well, today, we're here to answer this tender question.
The first structure we studied was the external anatomy. Here is the chicken's ear. The ear of a chicken is a circular opening into the ear canal. It is covered in a layer of small feathers. The earlobe is located right below the opening of the ear. The color of the lobe indicates the egg color. A white earlobe means that the eggs will be white, while a red earlobe means that the eggs will be brown. The purpose of the comb and wattles is not very clear. It is likely they are just ornamental. The size and color are extremely variable and depend on sex hormones. This picture gives an idea of the diversity. Feathers are arranged in tracts and are made of keratin. Not only do feathers prevent skin damage, but they also keep the chicken warm. Laying hens normally molt or lose their feathers when they stop producing eggs, but modern strains of birds can molt without stopping. Birds are unique from many other animals because they have tough beaks composed of keratin. Chickens do not have teeth, but the beak acts as a useful replacement. The tongue of a chicken is made of heavily keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. A few filiform papillae are present on the surface of the tongue. Because these papillae do not contain taste buds, chickens do not have much of a sense of taste. The mouth has glands that secrete enzymes which break down the food, starting the digestion process. This is the uropageial gland, and the majority of birds have it. The uropageial gland is a bilobed sebaceous gland located dorsally at the base of the tail, and it secretes oil, which is distributed throughout the feathers during the preening process. Likewise, this gland is also known as the preen gland.
Now we'll look at the muscular system of the chicken. We'll start out by looking at the wing muscles. This is the biceps brachii, which flexes the wing. The two heads of this muscle originate near the glenoid fossa and proximal end of the humerus. It inserts at the proximal anterior surface of the radius. This is the triceps brachii, which flexes the shoulder and extends the forearm. It originates from the scapula and proximal humerus and inserts at the olecranon process of the proximal ulna. This is the deltoideus, a sheet-like muscle covering the dorsal shoulder originating at the proximal clavicle and inserting at the deltoid tuberosity of the proximal humerus. This muscle flexes the shoulder and rotates the wing outward. Now we're moving on to the leg muscles. First we have the iliotibialis, better known as the gluteus maximus. This is a sheet-like muscle that covers most of the thigh. It originates at the pelvis and inserts at the proximal tibia and at the patellar ligament. It flexes the hip and extends the knee and lower leg. Next we have the sartorius. This is a long, thin band at the anterior border of the thigh. It flexes the hip and extends the knee. This muscle originates at the lumbosacral area and inserts at the patellar ligament. This is the semitendinosus. It extends the thigh and originates at the ilium and ischium. This muscle inserts on the caudal femur. Next we have the semimembranosus. This muscle extends the thigh and flexes the knee. It originates on the lateral surface of the ischium and inserts on the caudal surface of the tibiotarsus. Next, we have the quadriceps femoris. This muscle originates at the ilium and it inserts at the patellar ligament. It extends the thigh. This is the ambiens. It originates on the ilium and pubis and inserts on the proximal tibiotarsus. Next, we have the adductor longus. It adducts and extends the thigh. This muscle originates at the ventral border of the ilium and pubis and inserts at the distal femur. Next, we have the gastrocnemius. This muscle flexes the knee and extends the foot. The three heads originate from the distal femur and proximal tibiotarsus. This muscle inserts at the tuber calcanei. Next, we have the tibialis anterior. This muscle flexes the tarsiometatarsus forward. Lastly, we'll look at the two muscles that make up the chicken breast. This is the superficial pectoral. It is the largest muscle in the chicken and it moves the wing downward. It originates at the sternum, furcula, and sternal ribs and inserts at the ventral surface of the ribs. This is the supracoracoideus. It lies deep to the superficial pectoral and it moves the wing up. Its origin is the same as the superficial pectoral, but it inserts at the proximal dorsal surface of the humerus.
Now we will examine the digestive system. The overall passage of food ranges from 2 to 24 hours in chicken. Remember from the external anatomy that the digestive process begins at the mouth. Chickens have no lips or teeth. Here we will see the opening to the esophagus and the trachea. The beak is used to crush, tear, or hold food. The tongue is narrow and often triangular with few taste buds, but contains numerous touch receptors. Most birds, including chickens, distinguish food by the feel of it. There are very few muscles found in the tongue. The hyoid apparatus is a bony framework that gives support to the pharynx and tongue and provides attachment to some pharyngeal, laryngeal, and lingual muscles. It lies between the left and right portions of the mandible and is attached to the styloid process of each temporal bone. The esophagus is a muscular tube running perpendicular and mostly dorsal to the trachea. In these pictures, the esophagus is light pink and smooth on the outside in comparison to the trachea. Food is moved through the esophagus down the crop by peristalsis. The crop is a temporary storage of food. From the crop, food travels to the proventriculus, which is a glandular stomach. It secretes hydrochloric acid, which has a pH of 0.7 to 2.3, peptic acids, and mucus for digestion. At this point, food has not been ground up yet. The gizzard has thick muscular walls with a sandpaper-like inner surface. Strong contractions of the muscles and presence of grits help to grind, mash, and mix food, especially hard materials such as small stones, which it can grind into a fine paste. The liver is a four-lobed gland located ventral and caudal to the heart. It is involved in bile production, glycogen storage, the metabolism of carbohydrates, detoxification, and the breakdown of ingested food and body proteins. The small intestines are composed of three parts, the jejunum, ileum, and duodenum. The jejunum and ileum are posterior to the duodenum. The mesentery fixes the small intestines to the dorsal abdominal wall and supports the superior and inferior mesenteric arteries and veins within the tissues. The main function of the small intestines is the absorption of nutrients. The pancreas is located within the duodenal loop of the small intestines. The exocrine function of the pancreas is to produce enzymes that aid in the digestion of food. When food enters the stomach, these pancreatic juices are released into a system of ducts that culminate in the main pancreatic duct. The main pancreatic duct joins the common bile duct to form the ampulla of Vater, which is located at the duodenum. The common bile duct contains another important enzyme for digestion called bile. The pancreatic juices and bile that are released into the duodenum help the body to digest fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. The gallbladder stores bile produced in the liver. Bile is important because it helps digest lipids in the small intestine. The gallbladder also concentrates the bile by absorption through the mucosal wall. The two blind-ended tubes, known as the ceca, provide a place for fermentation. This is where microbial breakdown of undigested food particles and digestion of cellulose occurs. Water absorption occurs here as well. The large intestines, or colon, is where the absorption of water and the drying out of indigestible food occurs. The remaining residue of the large intestine gets excreted from the cloaca, where the urine mixes with the waste. The external opening of the cloaca is called the vent.
Now we'll take a look at the reproductive system in a female chicken. The ovaries are located cranioventral to the corresponding kidney. Although, embryologically, all female birds have both right and left ovaries and oviducts, only the left ovaries of chickens actually develop as they grow. The ovary is fully formed when the chicken hatches. It contains thousands of tiny ova, each within its own follicle. Once the female reaches maturity, the ova develop a few at a time to make the yolk. The infundibulum is a funnel-shaped structure used to catch the egg from the ovary, located in the terminus of the oviduct. It is here where fertilization will take place if the chicken is allowed to breed. The egg then passes to the magnum, where the albumum, or egg white, is added around the yolk. The shell membranes of the egg are formed in the isthmus. These membranes loosely hold the yolk and egg white until the rest of the albumum is added in the uterus. In the uterus, the hard calcified shell is placed around the developing egg. The shell is mainly composed of calcium carbonate. It takes about 20 hours to completely form the hard shell. This is the F1 follicle. It is the next follicle that will be fertilized. Beside it, there are slightly smaller follicles, which are the F2 follicles. Even smaller than those are the immature follicles, which can be white or yellow. The egg will stay for 15 minutes in the infundibulum, then it will stay for 3 hours in the magnum, then it will proceed to the isthmus, where it will stay for 75 minutes, then finally in the shell gland, or uterus, for 20 hours. The egg in this chicken is in the uterus.
and may have been in there for a minimum of 4.5 hours or a maximum of 24.5 hours. Finally, the egg reaches the last portion of the oviduct, the vagina. Here, a thin protein coating called bloom is applied to the shell to keep harmful bacteria and dust from entering the eggshell pores. It is also here where the egg gets turned horizontally before getting laid so that the large end comes out first. As a hen lays an egg, she turns her cloaca in the last segment of her oviduct inside out so that an external bulge completely contains the egg as it makes its way out. This is so that the egg does not get contaminated by other excretions on the wall of the cloaca. Once the egg is out, the bulge gets retracted almost immediately and the vent closes. Now we are going to briefly look at the male chicken reproductive system. These are the testes. The primary function of the testes is to produce sperm and testosterone. They are located cranial-ventral to the kidneys. Like ovaries, testes are smaller outside of breeding season and get noticeably bigger during the breeding period. Spermatogenesis occurs in the seminiferous tubules and is promoted by FSH and LH. Unlike mammals, the testes are contained within the body cavity, where they maintain normal core body temperature. The vas deferens is where sperm is conveyed from the testes to the raised papilla on the lateral aspect of the cloaca. This papilla serves as the mating organ. Additionally, the vas deferens is the main area of sperm storage.
Now we are going to look at the respiratory system. When a chicken breathes, air flows into the oral cavity and through the glottis, which is the entrance to the long tubular structure called the trachea. The trachea, also known as the windpipe, eventually divides into two much narrower tubes called the bronchi, which lead into the lungs. But before looking at the lungs, it's important to take note of the syrinx, which is located at the place where the trachea divides. Because chickens do not have vocal cords, they use the syrinx as a resonating chamber to make noise. They can alter the intensity and pitches of the sounds they make through changing the air pressure passing from their lungs to the syrinx and by adjusting the tension of their syringeal muscles on the vibrating membrane. Once air passes through the trachea, it enters the lungs. The chicken's lungs are unique in that they feature thin-walled extensions called air sacs. These air sacs allow for unidirectional airflow through the lungs, which allows much more oxygen to diffuse into the blood.
Now we will take a quick look at the urogenital system. In the chicken, the kidney is a three-lobed structure found in the bony cavities formed by the ilium and synsacrum of the pelvis. It is located in the dorsal cavity of the abdomen. The function of the kidneys is to remove waste products from the blood and regulate the water fluid levels. The ureters are tubules emerging between the most cranial and middle lobe of the kidneys that run parallel to the abdominal aorta and terminate in the cloaca. The function of the ureters is to carry urates from the kidney to the cloaca. Now we will explore the heart, which is part of the circulatory system. The heartbeat of a chicken is about 200 to 300 plus beats per minute. The pericardial sac surrounds the heart. The pericardial sac contains pericardial fluid, which acts as a lubricant to allow normal heart movements within the chest. The chicken has a four-chambered heart. The heart contains the left atrium, left ventricle, and right ventricle. Deoxygenated blood enters the heart through the superior and inferior vena cava and goes into the right atrium. From there, the right atrium contracts and the blood passes through the atrioventricular tricuspid valve into the right ventricle. The right ventricle then contracts and pushes blood through the pulmonic semilunar valve and into the pulmonary arteries, where it is taken to the lungs to be oxygenated. The oxygenated blood then travels through the pulmonary veins into the left atrium. The left atrium contracts and the blood passes through the atrioventricular bicuspid valve to the left ventricle. Finally, the left ventricle contracts and the blood is pumped out through the aortic semilunar valve into the aorta and is brought to the rest of the body.
Well, I hope this has been really fascinating for you, and I'm sure that now you know more than you ever wanted to know about chicken anatomy. But be sure to tune in next time for the next episode of Answering the Tender Question.